Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. I'm Bill Davis, and I get to welcome you to shows 1710. This is the place we answer tech questions live 7 days a week. It is time to get right to our questions. Our reading today is Alexander Knight. Alexander, what have we got today?
First question this morning comes from Robert Shoji in Los Angeles. What are the differences between the Sony A7 III and the A7 IV?
It was interesting to me to read a little bit, but Jesse Kester is going to start us off. Jesse?
Let's take a look at what we're talking about, and then we'll talk about what we're looking at. So we've got a little comparison chart here between the A7 IV and the A7 III. The 4, everything's a little bit better on it. It's also a little bit more expensive. I don't want to get into, I don't want to just read off a whole bunch of numbers and hope that a brain can interpret them. But it's basically incrementally better in pretty much every department except for, the basic stuff where it's not 1/8,000th of a second maximum shutter speed. Stuff like that is still consistent. It's the kind of thing that if you were buying like a first-time buyer, I would definitely go with the newer model for an extra $500. You get all the betters. But if I was shooting on the old one, it would be, tough to justify the purchase.
And I took a look at one of my favorite websites for camera reviews, DP Review, and it had a whole layout on one versus the other. So if you just search A7 Mark III versus A7 Mark IV, I was surprised that it's not an entire just upgrade of the last model. It really had a different approach. And so if you want a lot of details, DP Review does an in-depth breakdown you can read through, and they'll point out exactly what's different about the two, the different approaches they took. So lots of information out there. Let's go to our next question.
This one's from Peter Belbin in Houston, Texas. Low power UPS using LiFePO4 battery instead of lead acid seems like a good idea. What do you use to help protect your equipment from short-term power dropouts?
Alex Lindsay, dive in.
I have UPSs, and I have a couple of them in my my office has 3 of them, and I kind of break my stuff into quadrants. So my internet has its own UPS. Most of the computers here have another UPS and a couple other pieces. My lights are not on UPS, so if we lose power, you'll immediately know because all the lights go out, and that kind of helps me know, hey, lights are out. so it's very quick for me to understand it, and it also they're kind of hogs when it comes to power, so I don't want to dedicate that to them. I want to be able to keep on working. So that's how I do it. I kind of have stayed with those UPSs. I know them well. The battery is removable, so you can flip them upside down and pull the battery out. And if you're traveling, that's important because you can pull them out and flip the battery and put it back in. And then you can mark those. There's a piece of paper that you have to put on the outside of your Pelican case. You tape onto it that says those batteries are in there. So you can actually check them, but you have to flip the battery over and put it back in. You have to remember that batteries only work in the voltage that they were designed for. So if you're at 220 or 240 or whatever, or at 110, you have to have the right ones for the right place. And so that's pretty much what I do there. Anything that can take batteries, of course, I take them. One of the things I've kind of gotten into is I ordered just another little Smallrig makes these new 970 batteries for that you would put into sound devices stuff. Some of the Sony cameras, USB-C's in the battery, so there's no finding a battery charger anymore. You just plug it in, which I like a lot. So anyway, those are some of the things that having those batteries and then those larger UPSs. I don't get any UPS I can't change or flip the battery for. So I don't go any smaller than that, which is about the same price as the one you're showing. The UPSs that I get are about $150.
There you go. Hopefully that was helpful to you, Peter. Let's go to our next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida is asking thoughts on the new TASCAM FR AV2 compact field recorder.
Jesse Kester is going to help us out. Jesse?
Let's take a look at this device and then we'll yak about it a little bit. Looks pretty cool. It's pretty much exactly what you'd expect from a 2-input recording device, 32-bit float audio, which, if you're not doing that on your little field recorder, what are you even doing? Other than that, very, very standard. They're talking a lot about how it can sync time code between devices, which is nice, a warmly welcomed feature. but really, kind of a pretty standard device. A good one, but nothing explosive. This is not a game changer.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I think it would be. I mean, this is in the same range that it would have to compete with Zoom. So that's the Zoom, the not Zoom what we're on right now, but Zoom, the recording company. And so I think that would be, that's the challenge for it. It does look like Tascam has, as far as the fit and finish interface looks pretty good. The one interesting thing is that it has a Bluetooth adapter, or it has, I guess, an optional Bluetooth adapter you can get for it, so that you can monitor wireless. You can just put some wireless headphones on and be able to monitor it. I wouldn't do that if I was the recordist, but I think that these are often designed for people who are doing a lot of things. So you're moving around, you've got a recorder, you've got your camera going. A lot of times this is a one-person show. And so being able to put your headset in and then be able to work around, talk to talent, do the other things you need to do while you have a wireless connection, it's kind of cool. For the people that this is aimed for. I would never do that for something that I was getting paid for, but I can see where people are in a one person, because imagine being able to run 20 feet forward, you're by yourself and you can hear to the mics while you're moving them around for talent, for an interview. That's the kind of thing that would be really useful for.
Nice. Let's move to our next question.
Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. I watched NZ v England cricket via FTA free-to-air TV today, crystal clear 1080i content. My old non-smart Panasonic TV is an HDTV. Are there any countries where FTA is being broadcast at 4K or greater?
Alex Lindsay.
I don't know. I mean, 4K is rolling up, and you're seeing it in some places, but in many places where a cable network or YouTube or others are providing 4K, it's really scaled up 1080i. And so 1080i is still what a lot of people are shooting on. There are some American football and some other things. I think European football are both. They are slowly moving towards 4K. I don't know. I haven't seen any cricket that is in 4K yet. It would make sense. Less little balls, a big wide field. 4K would be great. So I think that 4K would definitely improve the experience there. It's the challenge with 4K and broadcast is really the entire infrastructure. When you say, "Oh, I want to do 4K," it's not that I've changed the cameras or even the truck. It is, okay, well, how are you getting it out? Are you using a satellite truck? Are you using and getting a 4K truck is not trivial. Getting a 1080i truck is nothing. Like, you can get that almost anywhere in the world for, a couple $1,000s. Getting a 1080p truck is a little harder. Getting a 4K truck is really hard. And I'm talking about the satellite uplink. So, and a lot of these are satellite uplinks. So if you have that, even fiber distribution, all kinds of other things get more complicated as you go to 4K. So those are it's an entire workflow problem.
Plus, I just think that the social change that has happened over the last 15 or 20 years in terms of people going away from a centralized TV viewing experience in their living room, not to say that everybody has done that. There are plenty of people who are still doing that. But I know my personal change, I used to have, I think, 4 or 5 televisions in my house. Not only the main living room TV, but there were TVs in most of the bedrooms. There was TV on the patio. I just had a lot of TV screens. I am down to one. There's only one what I consider family TV in my house anymore. And the rest of the time, my wife and I watch that same content we would have watched on TV on our devices one way or another. It's not uncommon for us to be working in different areas of the house, and I'm watching something on my phone and she's watching something on her iPad. So the broadcast penetration and the number of eyeballs it attracts, I think, is constantly diminishing on the broadcast TV side, and it's exponentially increasing on the device side. And in fact, my son and his friends, a lot of them have never owned a traditional TV. They do all of their content consumption on personal devices. And I think that changed more than anything else. I mean, the money traditionally follows advertising, now subscription more and more. But that is going away from the living room and going on to personal devices. And I don't think that trend's going to stop anytime soon. So broadcast is a different thing today in my thinking than it used to be. We'll see how it whirls out. Next question.
This one's from Paul Terry, Walhus in Hot Springs. Is this Smallrig a good usable mobile kit for iPhone and Android? And there's a link there.
Alex, take a look at that.
Yeah, I did. This is the one that. Sorry, a little sneezing fit.
Yeah, I thought you were maybe having...
So I'm trying to talk.
Yeah, proving that this is live, folks.
Yeah, exactly. This is live when it's not a record. So the one you see on the left is the one that Paul's talking about. It's a little more expensive, about $250. The one that I have is the one on the right. It's about $50. I'd still probably get the one on the right, the one that I got for $50. And the reason is that I need those mounting points on the front. And without that, I can't do what I'm trying to do. So even though there's lots of extra mounts on this co-designed one, the one that I have has the mounts that I need. And so I would have a hard time building for that. So it's a lot less expensive.
I will say that Smallrig has become really a solid force. Their line of accessories and mounts and cages is as good as anyone's. Now, they do have competition out there. I will say once you buy into an ecosystem like Smallrig, you tend to end up going back to their products because they have so many extra things that you can mount, particularly in this era. Things like, I remember the little tiny hard drives, the small ones got specific mounts that were designed to bolt them onto a cage like that and make sure it's an absolutely solid connection. In fact, they even have clamps for the cable coming in. So for somebody who's using your phone to shoot things and you can't afford to make mistakes by having your hard drive detach in the middle of an active shoot, they solved those kind of problems. So a lot of engineering went into that. And so these folks, Zacuto, and there's some others that had really good reputations for mobile filmmaker rigs, I think are doing quite well and will probably continue to. So,
yeah, one
thanks
thing
for the question.
I kind of want to lay out for in my opinion, I bought a lot of this stuff from a lot of different places. The rig, to kind of give you a sense of where I think the cages fall into place. Newer is kind of newer, and others kind of at the bottom, like as far as these kind of cages, and really when you buy them all, they're all going to work pretty well. It's fit and finish and how long they last, which is really the thing that you look at. So I would say that the next step up from the newer stuff is the Smallrig. The Smallrig is a good value. I wouldn't say that it's the highest quality, but it's a good value. I have to admit, I have almost all my stuff is Smallrig, and it's partially because I got these rigs. So I got cages for my my phone, and I was concerned that the screw spacings and everything else wouldn't be the same if I bought into another system. So you have to really think before you start buying these. Like you get into a system and you don't, and most of them are pretty standard. And by the way, like newer Camvate is another one. And I've got little cheese plates from Camvate and stuff like that. But you can definitely feel like didn't cost as much to make these. Then you have Smallrig, and then the next step up from there, I would say, is stuff like Tilta. So I would say Tilta is better than Smallrig. And then you start having Condor Blue. So Condor Blue is probably the top of the kind of semi-pro consumer version of these. And then after that, you're talking about like Wooden Camera, and there's a bunch of other ones that are really filmmakers. Like you see these on a lot of sets. So, but the Blue Condor ones are the kind of the higher end of that area. So think about that as you start to buy stuff, because once you start buying into that system, you're probably going to keep buying into that system for the reasons that I said. Sometimes the screw spacings aren't identical, and then you have a hard time putting different components on. Now if you build everything around, I'm starting to build a lot of stuff around NATO mounts, then that doesn't matter as much because the NATO mounts work everywhere. You just need the NATO mount to match on to the things, and then things click on. But if you're screwing things directly in, you have to kind of think through that. And so if I was going to start again, I might start with Condor Blue, just as a note. Like Condor Blue is probably, it's just a lot of stuff. They all have about the same number of things, but at a budget, the Smallrig stuff has worked really well. I built the rigs that we used in NAB. I'm building a new rig with it. So they work. If I used it every day, I have a feeling they'd slowly kind of wind out. The other thing to look at is the newer stuff from Smallrig is much better. Like when you get the arms, the old arms will swivel around with weight. The new arms are much better built, and they're twice as expensive, but they are much better built. So they're kind of coming up the food chain. Smallrig is coming up the food chain as well.
Alexander Knight, you wanted to weigh in on this?
Yeah, just quickly on the qual, I have actually noticed and really appreciate the changes Smallrig has been making, because I've been buying these new little, I don't know what they call them, they're little, not magic clamps, something similar to that, where you can it's got a quarter 20 on the end, and they now claim to have aircraft grade aluminum, and the ball joints even are substantially better, and I am happy to pay that extra price because they are absolutely an improvement.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
And the ones that I would highly recommend if you're as you're building them, because I build a lot of these rigs on these mounting arms. That's what is, look for these ones with larger. It makes a difference. It does make a difference when you have something more to grab onto. These ones are the ones that I've learned not to like. These are the kind of the ones that were based around Noga rigs. These you can see these ones with a rosette. If the mount has a rosette, it's going to be much less likely to slide. But what I really have grown to like are ones that I'm able to tighten in this fashion here. So let me see if I can zoom in on that. It is.
Yeah, it's got a little thumb wheel encapsulated. It's got a
thumb wheel at the mount, and it really is kind of life changing to have once you have these mounts here, here that you can swivel. Now you're not loosening it and turning the arm. You can tighten it exactly where it needs to be, and they've got ones at different lengths that way. And I would highly recommend that style. It's much easier to build complex rigs with. And
you don't have to go looking for your Allen wrench every time you want to lock something in place. I like that. Those as well. All right. Hopefully, Paul, that took care of some information for you. Next question.
Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. This YouTube video blew me away. I didn't know Macs could be clustered via Thunderbolt. It also woke me up about what's going on with AI and LLMs. Thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't have time to see what you were looking for there, but I will say that from the day that I learned about target disk mode in the old Thunderbolt world, that you could actually connect to external machines and use more than one at the same thing with simply a cable, it started changing my thinking about these things. Alex, you want to dive into this?
Well, I think that this is, in this case, over a network. What they're doing is running the whole LLM across that network of Macs. I think that if I remember correctly, looking at this was a really cool thing to do, but not very efficient. So it was not a super efficient thing to do. I think it was a good video. He's gotten a lot of views, but I think it didn't turn out to be. It doesn't sound like, if I remember correctly, and I've talked to some other people about it, that this configuration would be as efficient as many other more traditional ones. But it is cool that you can take a bunch of Mac Minis and turn them all into an LLM. A lot of people are definitely looking at local LLMs from a security perspective, in some cases from a speed perspective, in some pieces overall if you want something to run for weeks, doing something, you want to have it local. So there's a bunch of reasons, and I think that the Mac Minis are cool that way. I'm not sure if everything's been optimized to take full advantage of them yet.
And don't forget, the show runs on your questions. If you have questions or just want to make your voice heard in a different way, if you're in the Mukana system on the back end, you can vote the questions up. And if you vote things up, if you're active in that, we will get to the ones that have the higher voted quicker, and we will spend more time talking about them. So you do affect the run of show in that way. Let's go on to our next question.
From the QR code, Logan Gibson in Gadsden, Alabama, is there a better Dante interface with remote adjustment capabilities in the same range as an Allen Heath DT20-X Dante input interface? Looking to use in a loud auto racing environment with shotgun mics for that sound.
Ooh, that is a tough. I'm not speaking about Dante, because to be honest with you, I am not a high-level Dante user. But just in terms of that kind of sound feed, that is a tough environment for getting even NAT sound. I've had circumstances where I've had to literally put 2 inline 20 dB pads on a signal because auto racing is just so loud. Shotguns generally have a high SPL capability, so it's not the place to take out your large diaphragm mic or something like that and try to put it in the pits, because it may not come back, and certainly not a ribbon or something like that. But that's as far as my expertise goes. Again, I'm not a Dante whiz. We do have people on various panels who are very good at this, though. So it may just be that your question isn't the best for this panel. So come back and try it again sometime later. Or maybe Alexander can help you out. He just popped up. Alexander?
I was just trying to remember there's a company called RDL that makes a variety of Dante mic preamps. I don't know about the remote control, but that's one company to look at. Okay,
and Alex will dive in on this too.
Yeah, there's some Neve interfaces that possibly could work. Mickey also points out that SSL has a digital stage box that can take Dante cards. So those are possibilities. Again, the big problem that you have, remote control is difficult to make these all work. But and I think that it is something that the industry needs, is more of interfaces that we can control remotely that don't have, I just need the box. I've talked to people about this. Like, I would love to have a version of the Scorpio or something smaller that is just Dante, and it has all the great preamps and it has all the controls, but it's not a field recorder. It just has an Ethernet in, and I open up an interface and it just works, and I can record all the things that I want, and maybe I don't even remote from I might not even remote from the same place. I might be in another country remoting in. So anyway, I think I think that the challenge that you have is you really want good preamps, and Mickey points out that most Dante stage boxes can be remotely controlled via apps, which is true. What I'm trying to match up is good preamps with remote control, and I don't know if those are there. Those are going to be there. The Rio, as Mickey points out, which I've had a couple of, are great boxes, and you can definitely remote control everything that they do there. Depends on how many inputs you need as well.
Moving on. Next question.
Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. Spiritbox released a behind-the-scenes snippet of their recent music video. Alex has done a lot of these, so I thought I'd ask him and the panel of the gear you can see used in this and thoughts on that.
I haven't taken a look at it. Jesse Kester, did you manage to pull it up?
Yeah, let's take a look at this. And what we're looking at is just a 2-minute behind-the-scenes compilation reel from the music video shoot. And you get occasional shots of the gear. You're seeing a lot of the usual suspects, the fly cam, the fishing rod that comes out of your back. We'll speed things up a little bit here because there are a lot of shots of the band, a lot of shots of filming, but as you can see, it's very high contrast, so there aren't that many shots of, the gear isn't very clear. You see some Steadicam in here. Let's pause this and go right to the one shot where you can see the camera clearly, and I'm guessing that is the Arri Alexa 35, looks to be the same side panel right there, and that seems to be the appropriate camera for this scale of production. And I really can't stress this enough. If you're a band and you're doing music videos, please, please, please do behind the scenes stuff. This content is so valuable to your music video will be watched more, but it'll be a passive watch by a lot of the viewers. This stuff is so actively watched by your core fans that it is very high value content.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, it really is amazing how available a lot of these videos have become. So the Arri is a great solution, obviously, to make this work. It looks like they've got a lot of. By the way, it looks like the results of a pretty good smoke machine. so they've got a lot of haze in there, and that really makes a difference. I think a lot of people don't realize how much when you watch production. When you watch this, of course, they're trying to make it look very smoky, but in many productions, there's a little bit of haze added to almost every shot. You have someone right before they shoot, the haze goes up, and then someone walks through with a big thing and kind of whiffs it around and moves it around and just creates some thickness in the air that is really, really common for a lot of these shots to have. So that's something to always keep in mind when you're looking at these, is how often they're adding a little bit of thickness to the air to make that actually work. They add a lot of thickness to this one. But the other thing to look at is how doable most of those things are. The Arri 30, I think it's probably an Arri that's there. There's a Steadicam. That's a light Steadicam, so it's not one of the bigger, heavy Steadicams, and so it's probably not as expensive. But a lot of the shooting, you could probably build something. You could build a rig or a set of. You could probably have $20,000 worth of hardware and do much of what they're doing as far as the AV parts of this, and probably it would look not identical, but almost. So I think that's it's really come a long way as far as what's possible for all of us.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is just me personally, and it's not a criticism at all because they did a fabulous job with this. As I'm sitting here watching it for the first time, I can see time, effort, intent, design, all of these things are clearly present here. But whenever I see a music video and the first thing I see is black and white, it takes me a moment to get away from, I wonder if somebody had a color balance that was really wacky and decided to dump all the color. Again, that is not the case with this video. It's just a reaction to me because in my career, back in without money, if you're starting out, it is really easy to get a white balance wrong. And in those cases, I saw a lot of people go to black and white as a crutch. I just say, if you're shooting correctly, there is no need to do that. And like this, it is an aesthetic choice that I think they pulled off brilliantly there. And all the techniques that they used in the background, including the hazing that Alex was talking about, the DP understood what that was going to do when you had bright sources like lights or backlit in the scene, and he managed or she managed contrast beautifully. They managed contrast beautifully to pull off an aesthetic look and succeeded miraculously in that. So well done for the entire production team involved there. That is a knee jerk for me from an old school guy going, why isn't there any color in this? Oh, that's why. They wanted to do that because it's a look and they pulled it off really nicely, as have many black and white artists working in that because they love it. Alex, you wanted to get it back in on this?
And going to black and white does fix a lot of color problems.
Yes, it does. There's no question.
It's a pretty common, I mean, Bill's being nice about it. There's a 50-50 chance that this could have been done just because it was like, well, the cameras are everywhere. We don't have time to do this for a behind-the-scenes video. So let's just make it all black and white. And it's just, I don't want to be mean, but
I was trying to be so nice.
Really nice about it, but there's a 50-50 chance, because you have, oftentimes you have the folks shooting the music video, but the people shooting behind the scenes have a lot of different cameras. They have different levels of experience, and you just it's kind of blending everything together by making it black and white. So I've done it. Made it black and white because I was like, this will take too long. Like, it's not that it couldn't be done. It's just that I don't have time and I don't have the money to do that. So we'll just make it black and white.
I'm leery in this case because things are so well lit. Obviously, they had a lot of planning. In fact, I was just seeing that scene in my small monitor of the music video woman well lit.
But the question is the behind the scenes, like who was shooting it with what cameras and what, and so I'm not saying that's what they did. But I am saying it might have been.
Yeah, they could have taken phone footage and things like that for the BTS stuff, and you never know what's going on there. Exactly. All right, let's move on to the next question.
This one's from Jeff Vealey in Henderson. Is it possible to use a continuity camera with a Mac Mini M4? Forums say it should be supported, but doesn't work.
Alex, what's your experience?
I don't get it. Like, I don't, the continuity camera thing makes me crazy. Like, the biggest problem I have with continuity camera is that it happens when I don't expect it to. And it's like, hey, your phone is now available to your computer. So I have to admit, most of my time is spent turning it off. I haven't tested it with my Mac Mini M4. I'll try to do it. I'll see if I can get it working. But again, my biggest complaint is mostly that the two things that I have a lot of trouble with, because I have a lot of control over what I'm doing, is that my iPads become available to my computers as other screens without me knowing it. So my mouse just disappears. Like, I don't know where the mouse went, and then it's around here somewhere.
It's
but
stage
it's like,
right, maybe.
It's like somewhere. My iPad is like sitting somewhere else, and it's got the mouse, so I think Apple making these so easy has actually made it pretty frustrating for me. Mickey pointed out, he's asking, are both devices signed to the same Apple ID? Do both devices have Wi-Fi turned on? Is continuity camera enabled in both devices, which you would need to have happen for those things to work?
Alexander Knight.
Yeah, if you just do a web search for Apple continuity camera, Apple has their list of system requirements. What Mickey said is correct, because Apple also says you have to be signed into the same Apple account using two-factor authentication as well. Also, make sure AirPlay and continuity and AirPlay and handoff are turned on by default. But to Alex's point, so I've never used continuity camera, and when iOS 18 came out, I installed it, and this has never happened before, but I came on to this Zoom meeting one day, and suddenly my camera showing up in Zoom is my iPhone, and I had no idea what was going on. I couldn't figure out, and it was black, by the way, because my phone was locked. So I'm like, why am I getting a black picture? And then I looked and I realized the name of it was my iPhone. So yeah, talk about things that happen unexpectedly. I had to immediately turn off handoff.
Alex, you want to come back?
David Brady also points out they won't work over two different subnets. So for some reason, if your Wi-Fi is on one subnet and your local connections or your computer's on another, it won't work either.
Eduardo Augustine.
Right. So Brady actually knock it in, right? You got to make sure that it's actually in the same network and make sure that it's in the same subnet. But I can attest to what Alex is saying and what Alexander states. Continuity is just weird how it behaves. It just decides when it wants to work and when it doesn't. And unfortunately, it's not supported by all the other products. Like if you're trying to go to a Google Meets call, continuity is not going to work. So if you're just for testing, all right. But if you're going to do it for production, I would keep my way away from that. So just try and figure out if you're in the same network, make sure that you're connected to the same Apple ID so that you can find them.
Alex, you wanted to come back yet again.
Yeah, I think that the hard part is what's funny is that Apple's made things so easy for those of us who have a lot of Apple products. It actually gets worse. Like my headphones are constantly trying to find. I turn Siri off on everything because I hit Siri and I don't know what device is going to say like I don't know where it's going to be, what it's going to be, how it's going to be. Yeah, so it's complicated.
Sometimes I think this was a research project back in the dark parts of Apple because when continuity camera first came out, the idea that you could put your iPhone on the top of your laptop as a, quote, better camera than your older laptop, I guess. But then when they said that computational photographically, they can now get both you in the picture and a down shot of your keyboard or something like that, I was going, oh, they're doing an awful lot of processing behind this signal, and it seemed like it was hey, wonder if people would like to do this if we program it in, as opposed to a thoughtful. I think
that also might have been an idea around Zoom because people want to be able to show things and they want to talk about things on their desk. And I think that what it's doing actually in that case, it does it differently depending on the device. But I think with the iPhone, it actually uses the wide angle, so it shoots you with one camera and uses the wide angle and then and what's interesting is that the de-warping that Apple can do, because the lens is always the same and it's high quality, they know exactly how to do that, because it's,
So that's why I say I think it was a bit of a research. But look what else we can do now that we've got all these pictures. I don't know anybody who's
used it. I don't know. I mean, I don't know anybody who's used the desktop view. I mean, Apple shows it all the time, and you're like, yeah, no, thank you.
I should try that just
we
for
should,
but I've never looked at it either, just to see how it works. All right, let's go on to our next question.
This one's for me. Buying a Synology NAS versus just building your own PC for this type of solution. What do you think? I know how to build PCs, but it's been a while since I've spec'd something out. Wondering if I could build one cheaper.
Eduardo, what do you think?
So I think you can definitely build one cheaper. Usually for NAS, it depends on the trajectory of the brand, right? People will go by if it's either Synology or there's other brands that you could use. But in my personal opinion, I would build my own. Because I've noticed in my experience that the difference between these different NASs is that actually the software is the selling point for them, right? So you can actually use an old computer that I had. I had an old Intel i7, pretty old with a different socket, and I just got a new motherboard for a couple of bucks, and I put in 16 gigs of RAM there, and I am using Unraid, which allows me to be able to handle it as a NAS. And the motherboard that I got, I put it into a Jones Bow case, which actually has a additional PCI card that allows you to have 5 different disks. So that would allow you to manage and handle all the different disks. And the software works pretty well, which allows you to create different share points, which are directories set by mounting lines. And you can just decide where you want to save everything. And you can also add an NVMe card or NVMe disk where you can have it as a cache drive. So I actually, when I'm editing videos from DaVinci Resolve, I upload things to there. I create the proxies inside of that NVMe, and I'm able to use it as a simple, like if I had the drive connected to my computer. And it's less than what a Synology box would have cost. I just spent like about $300 USD.
Clever. Jesse.
If you're building yourself, the journey is the destination. So if you enjoy the build and enjoy troubleshooting and enjoy figuring how to put all the pieces together, you don't just save money, you get to enjoy the process of building it yourself. If you don't enjoy that stuff, if the destination is the destination, it's definitely worth the extra bucks to get something that's pre-built and that has lots of documentation and forums where people can be discussing what can go right and wrong with that uniform device.
I want a T-shirt with "The journey is the destination." Alexander Knight.
Yeah, I definitely do enjoy that. I mean, I previously in another life, before I was even a Mac user, I had a company and I was building PCs all the time, but it's been a while since I've done it. But a question for Eduardo, you said Unraid. Is that, who makes that?
So that is a third party. I'm going to send you the link, but Unraid is a software that they built specifically for this. Actually, people started using it for Plex, the media player. So you can actually create or install Docker because it handles Docker containers, and you can install different apps. And you have alternatives like Plex and other tools that you could use for home automation and all this stuff. So it's pretty nice. I'll send you the link. And the cool thing is, just a pointer, Synology and the other NAS companies, they actually cheap out on CPU and all this stuff because their software is the selling point, right? So you can actually have a better NAS with a better processing power if you build it yourself. Imagine, I'm using an old Intel i7, and it's much better than some of the Synology NAS flagships.
And don't forget, if you'd like to support what we do here, officehours.com/donate. You can punch something in here. This is an entirely volunteer 501c3 organization. We run on your generosity and things like that, and I have for all of these shows, and we are thankful for that. And speaking of thankful, I haven't mentioned the fact that in at least the U.S. and other countries that celebrate it, it's Thanksgiving Day. We're really pleased that you came to join us for Thanksgiving Day, and we are thankful for you, everybody who watches this show, all of our volunteers. We'll talk about them at the end of the show, but this show has attracted such a fabulous community of people to pitch in and try to answer everybody's questions, and that's what we're going right back to now. Next question.
Jeff Veely and Henderson's asking, what specs would you choose for a Mac Mini reserved for running Companion and Zoom tiles?
Alexander Knight.
Doesn't take much to run that stuff. Even an M1 Mac Mini with 8 gigs of RAM Companion doesn't take that much. Certainly Zoom tiles, definitely because of the graphics processing run that's required to composite all that stuff together. But even an M1 Mac, like if you found a refurbished M1 Mac Mini from Apple, you'd get it for next to nothing, and it would run that stuff. Alex
Lindsay.
Yeah, as Alex said, you could get the base version and it would probably run everything that you would need to run. I'd be tempted to run those on 2 separate machines because if I'm running tiles, I want to focus on that, and I want Companion. Companion can be on almost anything. Like it's just routing. So you could you definitely the $499 version of the Mac Mini M4 that you can buy at Costco is probably enough to do what you need to do. If you want to have a little bit more horsepower, then go ahead and start going up the food chain. But I don't think Zoom tiles is not a very large memory hog. It's not going to need a lot more processing. It's part of that is because it's been written from the ground up to support the Mac platform. So it is written to this hardware. The Zoom team has worked very hard. This is a complete, I believe it's all written in Swift. I'm not 100% sure, but it is completely a Mac thing, and it's written to take full advantage of the GPU, the CPU, the integrated memory, everything else. And because of that, you need a very small machine to get a lot out of it, because that's where a lot of companies aren't taking full advantage of these ARM processors. People are still getting used to. Zoom went all in, on that, and that's why it's not available on Mac and PC. They're not trying to build something that works on both of them. They're just building something for the hardware, and so you probably could use the base unit and find that it was plenty powerful enough for you to do anything you want with tiles.
Eduardo.
Yes, well, right on the bank with what Alex said. Actually, I wanted to piggyback is that you want to make sure that this is an Apple Silicon Mac Mini. You could get older versions of a Mac Mini on eBay or somewhere else, but you want to avoid using the older architecture because these apps are actually set up for that specific new architecture in ARM. So make sure that those are either M2 or M1s. I mean, if you can get an M4, then perfect, right? And 8 gig of RAM is just fantastic.
Yeah, it's astonishing what a leap that new Apple Silicon endeavor was. And everybody I talk to who has migrated from the old Intel-based Macs into the new M series class has just been kind of like jaw-dropped about how smooth things run these days. Next question.
This one's from the QR code. A Barrera and Flowery Branch. Any KVM switch you recommend for a Mac Studio and a Mac Mini?
Alexander, what do you run?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the TestSmart products, and this 8-port switch is actually on sale right now from them. And this is the, it supports 4K 60, it's got RS-232. It also accepts TCP/IP commands, which I haven't set up yet, but I'm getting there. So this will allow you to switch up to 8 computers with a single keyboard and mouse, which I presume is what you're looking to do. They come with rack ears, so you can fit them in any standard 19-inch 1U rack space. They're very high quality. And yes, Alex, you can turn off the beeping noise. That is a setting in there. You can disable it as well.
You don't want it shouting at you all day long? Alex, dive in.
I have something that's about half the price that I got on there's not a particular name to it. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. I think that the next one I get is probably going to be the one that Alex just showed. I think that the LAN control is what I'm most interested in, is being able to not try to figure out mine has 232, RS-232. I would love to just have an Ethernet that I plug it into and then be able to fire it off. So that's what I'm primarily interested in there. 8, I think, is the right number. Just get a big one and then know that it's all going to work. Make sure that the buttons are on the front. Mine does beep, or did beep. I found that a little surgery, taking it apart, ripping out the PCO, putting it back together, got rid of the beep. So that was the only way I could figure out how to get rid of it. And so
nothing a pair of wire snips won't.
Exactly. I just took pliers and just was like, I'm just going to rip this off, And so anyway, so definitely, I think that is the easiest way to manage that.
Next question.
From the QR code, Brad Moore in North Fort Myers. Alex was on the Tech Guys several months ago and mentioned that his Telestrator app was coming out of TestFlight soon. Is there any news he can share?
Alex, how is it? How's the Telestrator coming along?
There's just a little drawing thing that Juan and I are working on that we're trying to fix before. And I have to admit that I've worked on it for so many years that I just want it to be just right when it goes out. I don't want to have a bunch of reviews like, it doesn't work, this doesn't work, or whatever. And it works really well. I use it every day. We may end up releasing it, but Juan is sooner. But Juan is just working on a little bit of a drawing thing that we're trying to get right. And so it's out there. If you contact me on Discord, I can send you the TestFlight link. It is in TestFlight. People are using it. I think everybody thinks that I should just release it. So we may release it soon. They're like, it just works. It works really well. And so stay tuned for that. But you can contact me. And by the way, if you don't know how to get to Discord, go to officehours.global/join, sign up you'll get an email. And in that email, you'll have links to how to get into Makana, how to get into Discord. And then in Discord, you can ping me and then we can go from there.
Do you still have to sign up for TestFlight, right, to be part of the
Yeah, you got to download TestFlight, but then you just got to give me the email that is in TestFlight, and then we send it to you, and then Bob's your uncle. I love that. I love that term. Yeah. Turns out that there was a Bob, and he did have an uncle in like the 19th century. There was like
English,
it was
right?
Yeah, it was English, and Bob had an uncle, and so when things were just right, they were like, and then Bob's your uncle. It means everything's going to work out fine, So I thought that was the weirdest term. I was like, what is it? And there is a history to Bob's your uncle.
See, even after the revolution, we still love you all over on the island. Let's go to the next question.
David Brady in New York, using NDI Monitor to record a signal resulting in 56 1.4 gigabyte files. Concatenation using ffmpeg fails due to different frame rates. Is there a terminal command to normalize and combine the sequence?
Oh, this is going to be a bit complex. Alex, do you have a solution for him?
Yeah, so I haven't done this with ffmpeg, but the way I would think about this is that I would convert all the files to so I'd get a big drive and I'd convert all the files. And you can build this as a script inside. So you can do this as a command line. And so you're going to kind of pipe these from one to the next, which is that you're going to convert all the files to the right frame rate, and then you're going to combine them, and then you're going to delete them. like delete not the files the original files, but you would then get rid of the files that you had created. It would take a little bit to build that in a script. It'd probably be easier to just throw it into compressor or media encoder or something like that at that point. But if you were trying to do it this way, I think that the way that I would approach that would be to have it do a series of events that basically converted all of these to the same frame rate and the same codec, and then have another command that then builds them all to a. And if you didn't want to delete them, deleting stuff as a command line is a little scary to me. Just like all the bad places that can go. And so you might want to be taking something where you're going out to a folder, and then it's grabbing everything in that folder and then combining it, and then you leave that folder and then you can delete it or you can look at it before you do it. Mickey pointed out, he said, output from Zoom, I assume. In the future, I would recommend sending the signal to a switcher such as a vMix or put it in the PGM, then record PGM that is locked to one format. And also you used, if you're doing Zoom, Zoom ISO will normalize the frame rate that's going out. So that's another thing to think about, is that if that's the case, Zoom ISO should give you a regular cadence group. It doesn't matter whether the frame rate's changing in Zoom itself.
This is what in the video world we call an interim stage using a mezzanine codec. We're trying to get every file into one thing that we know is going to maintain optimum quality. It's not going to do further recompression. It's going to do transcoding to get there, and the best systems allow that to happen without much, if any, quality loss. And then once you're in the mezzanine codec, you can do all the work you want, knowing that everything is on an equal footing, and then export out the other end to whatever you prefer as the final delivery codec. We do those kind of workflows all the time, and I think this is just the same kind of thing. I think Alex is exactly right. You're going to look for something that has some batch processing capabilities and get to a central standard first, and then go on from there to the next stage. Next question.
This one's from Douglas Carmichael. Any interesting deals for Black Friday?
Jesse Kester, have you found anything worth opening the wallet for?
You could do worse than 25% off a subscription to the print edition of The Onion.
Are you sure you're not just teasing us here? The Onion. Alexander.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of these types of sales, but I buy stuff when I need it. I have been needing quite a lot of cables lately, and thankfully, it just happens to be that a lot of those cables on Amazon are on sale right now. But if you look at the Amazon homepage and what they're peddling, what they're suggesting, there's a lot of cheap junk on there, and probably a lot of it or most of it you don't really need. But that's just my opinion. There's lots of software deals right now. I actually, my previous question about building a NAS, apparently Unraid is having a 50% off sale now. So if you want to build a NAS, you can get 50% off an Unraid license right now.
Alex?
I didn't need it. And at the price that it was on originally, I wasn't going to buy it. But this is the Anchor charger, desktop charger, it shows you what the voltage is of stuff that's coming out of it. So it has got 4 USB-Cs on the front, 2 on the side. It gives you a kind of a moment of like this is how much is going out, so you can see whether things are still charging or not. And again, I didn't need it, but at at 35% off, it was like, okay, this is, and it does. I do like it a lot. So I just got it a couple days. I got it last week or something. It's part of the thing. It's $109 instead of $170. At $170, I was like, that's absurd. I'm never going to buy that. At $109, I was like, okay, and so
reached the tipping point.
And I admit that I was out of charging. I needed more things. I have a lot of charging lines over here that are constantly got devices on them and everything else. And so I needed something. And so I didn't look at it as $109. The other one that I was looking at was $90. So I looked at it as $20 because I need a new one. And I need, the other one $80. So I was like, this is just $20 more, not twice as much. So there you go.
There you go. For me, it's a process. I worked in retail or retail adjacent advertising for such a long time that I'm always thinking, are they doing this because they want to give their customers a good deal or because they've got 86,000 of them on a shelf somewhere and they've got to move inventory? I think there's a combination of both. I will say that in the retail business, often a huge percentage of a company's product comes in that fourth quarter as they get into what in the U.S. is the Christmas buying season, but it could be just end of year inventory closeouts. So I'm always a little leery of that. One technique that I do use, though, is I find things that I say no to over the course of the year. Happened to me a couple of years ago. I was interested in Isotope RX, but it was pretty expensive at the time, and I didn't really have a lot of use for it. So I just put it on that list of check on Black Friday to see if this comes around. And sure enough, at the end of the year, I think there was a pretty big discount on Isotope, and I went ahead and pulled the trigger on it because I knew it was coming and I knew the sales would be hitting. That's where we are now. Alex, you wanted to get back in on this?
Yes, and I just wanted to make one more.
I got both
of
Alex.
us are Alex. Yeah.
Let's start with Alex Lindsay.
Alton Christensen points out that there's a Western Digital Black Friday sale for some of their products. Also, this is usually the cheapest time to buy the Waves plugins. If you're looking for Waves plugins, usually they're all $1 or something like that. And then also the Omniscope, I think, is 30% off right now. And this is the cheapest time of the year to buy Omniscope. If you don't own Omniscope, most of us do. No pressure, but most of us have it. It's it's the best videoscope, software videoscopes that you can get for your Mac or PC or Unix or Linux or whatever. So anyway, definitely worth checking out.
Alexander Knight.
Yeah, and if you are looking for deals on, you can often get really good deals at your local, whatever. I guess if you're in the U.S. Guitar Center or maybe even Sweetwater, but if you're looking for used deals on audio equipment like microphones, a lot of these types of retail stores, and I work in retail. So, a lot of times you take in stuff on trade and you can get really great deals, especially on instruments. If you're a guitar player, you're looking for a great guitar at a really good price. Oftentimes your local retail stores are where those deals are.
And I don't want to beat this horse into submission, so to speak, but I was driving back from Arizona to California on the holidays one year, and we went past this unbelievably long train. I mean, it must have been 400 train cars. It took us like 5 minutes to drive past this at freeway speed. And I came back and I happened to mention it to one of my friends who works in retail. He said, "Oh yeah, that's the resupply for Phoenix for in the middle of the holiday season." I mean, literally 400 rail cars full of merchandise to fill back the shelves. That just shows you how much activity there's traditionally been in this fourth quarter period for retail sales. Alex, you wanted to dive in one last time?
Matt Budd added that MIDI is typically is a playout system. So MIDI is 30% off. Resolume is usually 50% off. So those are definitely some good deals to look for software for the kind of things that a lot of us use. I think Resolume Arena, I think is probably what he's talking about there. The other thing is that look at how many 85-inch TVs are under $1,000. There's Sony's. Last year it was TCL. Yeah. And TCL now is down to $698 for a 85-inch screen TV, which is just crazy. But Sony, TCL, Hisense, all of these are getting below $1,000. And the reason I bring that up is that, if you're looking for a big screen, especially for production, they can be the frame rates and some of the stuff and some of the feature, some of the stuff doesn't work quite as well on these less expensive ones. So you really want to look at them carefully. But and you can return them, by the way. I was kind of amazed. Like Amazon, I bought an 85-inch screen TV and it didn't have the right mounts on the back. And so I sent it back. And they sent a crew to come pick it up because it took a crew to pick up an 85-inch TV. So it is, and it wasn't, in all fairness, it wasn't well documented. It said it had one thing and it didn't. But the point is that you can. And I know people say, well, you can't just buy stuff and send it back. But here's the thing: this is their business model. Amazon's business model is you can send it back, you can have it delivered, you can send it back when you're done. That's why you buy it. And I buy a lot of things from Amazon because it's really easy for me to get it back. And I keep most of it, the vast majority of it. And so But the point is that you may want to kind of put it through its paces when it first gets there to make sure, take it out, get used to taking your electronics out very carefully. Razor blades for opening them, carefully unwrap everything, understand how it went together so you can put it back if you needed to, and then test it heavily. Make sure that it's showing the content that you want to see at the quality that you want to see it at. But the opportunities to buy these is just incredible right now, of the size of the monitor and the quality of the monitors that we're getting now for under $1,000. It's pretty interesting. It also keeps on pushing towards what a lot of us have talked about of how it impacts theatrical. We talk a lot about the impact of theatrical, and I think that a big piece of this is less than $1,000 85-inch screen TVs make it hard to going to theatrical for anything less than epic. Nolan level, that kind of thing, because you can get most of that at home.
Next question.
This one's from Rian Smith in Trinidad, West Indies. Ever had a moment where you are directing a show and a moment captivated you so much that you lost yourself in the show and got out of yourself?
Rare, but yes. Jesse, your thoughts?
Yes, we have these all the time, and I really don't want to sound like a scold, but the job that we get hired to do is to keep all the hardships invisible to the client, and the other side of that coin is you have to keep all the joys, like all the surprise, beautiful things that make you feel that way. You kind of want to keep those secret from the client too, because that's sort of what the job is. So when we have those moments, I will look over to the AD and they will know exactly what I'm feeling, and we will talk about it over break. But in general, you want to keep that stuff invisible. And I'm sorry to be a scold on this most auspicious of holidays.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I mean, here's the shot here. You can see the person cutting and then the TD getting excited about it. I think that it was a good cut, but for most of us, we'd be like, okay. And it would be, for most of the directors that I work with, that cut would be Tuesday. So it's not, it would be one of many cuts that look like that in one given show. It wouldn't be any kind of build up to that. I think as you get started, you can get excited about a lot of these things. But I think that I will agree with Jesse. If a TD did this, and again, it looks like it's at a church. People are excited. These are volunteers, most likely, doing it, and they're very excited about creating something that they haven't done before, and I totally get that. If a TD did that for me, that'd be the last time they worked for me. That would be that, if they got up and jumped up about one shot, I wouldn't, it's too much of a distraction for the rest of the team. It's too much of a distraction for the next thing. It's too much of and it also tells me you haven't done it very much, because, great TDs do that kind of shot every other shot. If I'm working with a Nate Hill or I'm working with a Marcia Kerrigan, that's every shot looks like that. So I think that it tells me that they haven't done it very much if they got it that excited. So I will admit that we try to, oftentimes, unless they're really, really experienced and they've become jaded, we try to not match teams up, our production teams up with things that they like, because it makes it difficult. Like, we had a basketball player and he got really frustrated with me. He's a really good basketball player that worked for me, and I wouldn't put him on any of the basketball gigs that we had because I was afraid he'd get too distracted, with what he was actually watching and not be able to just focus on the show. So we oftentimes will try not to do that. And so that's the so I think that's the thing that we kind of are careful about as we go down that path, is not to get excited about it.
Let's go on to the next question.
Ryan Thomason in Houston, Texas is asking a question for Bill. Spotify is releasing new tools for audiobook producers. What tools do you use to measure metrics for your books?
I don't use very many, because that's on the back end. The ACX system that I distribute through is tracking all the metrics necessary, and I get to read them and determine what's doing well. Alex, did you have a thought?
Yeah, Spotify is ruining our industry. Just so you know, I have Spotify is ruining podcasts. They're ruining this thing. Over quantification of content makes it much harder to create good content. It is, you're measuring things, because what happens is you don't measure what matters. What you measure starts to matter. So then people start to manipulate it based on looking at those measurements, and they start making, they start wringing out the life out of everything. And so I think Spotify is the basis of the destruction of many of these industries. And I'm frustrated that we're giving them so much room in EU because screw those guys. They've ruined podcasting, and they've ruined, and they're just, and I look at the books. I'm like, well, they're going to, the only reason they're not going to ruin that is because they're such a small player compared to Audible. But it's really frustrating to watch how they're just tearing through our industries and ruining them for everyone.
I will say there is a real thing, paralysis by analysis, and I support what Alex said, because if you get into the point where you're doing things for it to push the numbers around rather than doing them for the love of what you're doing, it's a different thing. Not every job you do has to be loved. And, I've had books that I've read that it's just get the words right and let the information flow. That's all that matters. There are other books that I come across and maybe have to do that I go, somebody really cares about this. They really had a story they desperately wanted to tell. And for me, it's important to elevate my game to try to get that across to the audience, because it's their labor of love and they've entrusted it to me to bring to life, and that's no small ask, and I take it seriously. Alex, you want to have a last word?
When I see measurement of every little bit of content and the figuring out, I always think of Armageddon. I don't mean Armageddon like the biblical Armageddon, but the movie Armageddon, where they've drilled 50 feet and they've got this little card that says, that they should be at 600 feet or 500 feet or whatever. And Bruce Willis just looks up and goes, "Who made this? Who made this card?" Like this is what happens when you drill. And I think that and when we're doing stuff all the time, I think about that all the time when we're making something creative. Things that look like they're going sideways, and then we're going to bring them back together. And I'm always like, this is what happens when you drill. Like the creative process is not a precise science. And when we try to make it precise, it just drives all the life out of it. The life is in the inefficiencies. It's in the things that don't necessarily work. And I think that you see that with YouTubers burning out because they're spending all the time trying to measure the algorithm, and I think that they need to pay attention to some of those things, but getting caught up in trying to go to the measurement is a horrible idea.
I'm going to let that be the last word. Thank you all for spending part of your U.S. Thanksgiving, and for many other countries, Thanksgiving with us. We are very, very, very thankful for all of you who show up here. We're thankful for our panelists, an incredible crew of experts who have spent their entire careers working in these industries, and then after learning so much, developing so much taste and concern and ability to do something above just okay, decide to come here and be a part of our panels and share their knowledge. We really appreciate everybody through the course of this whole show who's been a panelist and has done that work. For our listeners and viewers, our producers, as we call them, we're serious about that because you really do run the show. Your votes in the back end, you're asking of questions, amazingly intelligent questions that everybody on the panel, we sit here and look at this and go, wow, another good question. Oh, that's worth answering. Let me dive into that. It's because of what you take the time to ask us every single day here on Office Hours. And to the amazing back end show crew, another incredible set of volunteers, some of the smartest and most technically aware and just overall generous people I have ever met in my life, who I am privileged to get to associate with, get my emails answered by, and just learn about here every day on Office Hours. We appreciate truly all the constituencies that make Office Hours what it is. And I'm going to end up the Thanksgiving by saying, thank you, Alex. If you hadn't, during the beginning of the pandemic, said, hey, anybody want to just join me for doing something because the world is shutting down? I mean, this has turned out to be an amazing value add for my life, and I think an awful lot of other people feel exactly the same way. So thank you, Alex.
Well, and I'm very thankful for this incredible community. I mean, this is the most amazing community that I've been a part of in my entire life. And I'm very thankful for everyone that I interact with in Discord, and I interact with on the panel, and we interact with on the shows, and when we're doing little events and everything else. It's just such an amazing thing, and I'm just always so amazed with people all over the world that are, what I really feel like a part of my tribe. But it's a global tribe, and we're all part of it. And I'm very, very thankful every day. And that's why I get up every day, and almost every day is here. I'm here because I really enjoy it, and I really enjoy being in connection with everyone around the world that's in Office Hours. So thank you very much.
Well, it worked in part because the last part of your overall arching mission statement was where no one gets left behind, and that is the heart and soul of this. Everyone is welcome. Everybody can get access to this information wherever you are on the planet. All you need is just the basic tools of getting on the web, and we hope sincerely that we have helped a lot of you advance your careers and your personal lives by passing this information out as freely as we can. To lock traversal today, 40,000 miles, that is 65,000, kilometers, or 320 million bananas for scale. We will be back tomorrow doing the same thing. Thank you for joining us for our Thanksgiving show.
Sous vide the turkey today.
Oh, are you? You're going to go?
I'm working today, so Kevin's over. We're working on some stuff, and so my family went south, and and Kevin and I are at the house, and so but I got just a turkey breast. I'm like, we're just going to throw that in the sous vide. That'll be
Alex,
I feel you're safer than the deep frying turkey environment
it's
that always
too much trouble. Like the sous vide is so easy and it comes out perfectly every time. It's kind of like, you set it to 145 or 143 and you leave it in for 2 hours and it comes out and it's the best turkey you've ever had and you're done. Like, like it's just like, like it's not, you don't get the same crispiness on the outside, but the meat is perfect. so like every single time. So
I thought we were going to have no content, so I actually pulled out. Am I going for traditional knife or the old electric knife?
Oh, we didn't get to that question. Well, that was a good Thanksgiving question.
Japanese steel or electronics?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Oscillating blades, serrated oscillating blades is my choice.
If you use a sous vide, it's just a fork. Like it just comes right. It just comes right apart. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Take care, everybody. See you all tomorrow.
Bye-bye.